How dare you? I wish I was in your shoes. I wish I was managing what you were managing. I wish I had those sorts of problems. Not realizing that you're not complaining, but you're processing. But because an individual hasn't experienced the unique adversity that you're experiencing, they are unable to relate to it. Hey, I got a question for you. The question is, have you ever dealt with stress? I already know the answer to that question, right? It's actually a rhetorical question because whether you are conscious of it or not, every single human being has dealt with, and in many cases is dealing with, the reality of stress. It could be stress relationally, it could be stress financially, it could be stress physically in terms of something that a diagnosis or something that's going on in a person's body. It could be stress financially in terms of needs that people have. And I think all of us to some degree are conscious of the fact that we're dealing with stress. But I got another question for you. And that question is, how are you dealing with it? It's one thing to deal with it. Everybody has dealt with it. Even Jesus himself dealt with it. The Garden of Gethsemane reveals a stressed man. But the question is, how do you deal with it? And in this video, I want to give you 3 scriptural strategies for dealing with all sorts of stress. And when I say all sorts of stress, why do I say that? Because I believe there are 2 types of stress. There's stress that comes from struggle. And I think many of us, at least, can relate to, can connect with the idea of struggling in some area and how that produces stress. If you're a parent and a child is struggling, that is stressful. If you're running a company and the trajectory of the company isn't headed in the direction that you desire, that is stress. If you got a marriage, you don't know if it's going to work, that is stress. So there is stress that comes from struggle. And I think it's important to have some scriptural practices on how to manage that, right? So that we don't slide into denial, so that we don't slide into escapism, so that we don't slide into fatalism. But then there's another kind of stress I think is equally important, but it's often overlooked. And that's the stress that comes with success. You know what I mean? And I think particularly in continuationist circles, which is the tribe that I'm a part of, I believe in the perpetuity of the majority of the spiritual gifts and whatever. The point that I'm making is I think there's a lot of conversation in our community about prophetic declarations, like prophetic announcements, what God is going to do. What God is going to do, what God is going to do. And I think that's important. That's appropriate. I think it gives us perspective. I think it gives us hope. But there's also got to be some conversation, I think, about what to do when God's done it, right? Because at some point, we have to go from prophetic declarations and prophetic announcements to prophetic fulfillment. God's going to do to God did it, right? And so there's not at least enough conversation in my experience. Maybe going on, I'm not exposed to it, but there's not enough conversation in my experience about what to do when God's done it. Because more of anything means more of everything. To whosoever much is given, much is required. So there's the stress that comes with success. And I know some people think, Dharius, what do you mean there's stress that comes with success? There's the stress of scrutiny. There's the stress of scrutiny. The digital world has been an incredible gift for us, but it comes with incredible burdens. And it is worldwide, instantaneous exposure to what is going on in the life of individuals. And when an individual experiences a degree and a dimension of success, whether that person is influential in terms of how much they're known or not, there is a degree of scrutiny. It could be scrutiny within a church, scrutiny within a company, scrutiny within a family, individuals assuming, oh, you think you are better than us. Individuals misinterpreting your actions, watch this, misinterpreting your actions without doing any investigative work to get any perspective on why you acted that way. So very often what comes with success is scrutiny. That can be stressful. Then there's also the stress of success it's the stress of sustainability. It is like whatever is obtained has to be, or not has to be, but very often whatever is obtained is something we want to maintain. So if the marriage finally gets to a place where it's fruitful and flourishing and fulfilling, you want to maintain that. If the company actually gets to a place where everything is up and to the right, trending in the right direction, you want to maintain that. If something's going on physically, you're actually able to get it under control, you want to maintain that. So it's one thing to obtain, it's another thing to maintain. And this maintaining comes with a degree and a dimension of stress, sustainability. Then there is something, watch this, there's a stress associated with success of solitude. And I know different people push back against this. And I think there needs to be room and space among thought leaders. I think Christians really struggle with this, but there needs to be room and space, particularly on secondary issues, not primary issues, for people to disagree. So there are people who say, no, you don't have to experience solitude if you're successful. It's only lonely at the top if you don't take the right people with you. And I agree with that to a degree. If you are assuming that solitude is answered by the presence of people who are with you, I think there's a degree of solitude that people experience. And I'm going to use Jesus as an example, not because they have the absence of people who are with them, but there's the absence of people who understand them. Because we can be with people that don't understand. They don't understand. And so some conversations that you would have about how you're processing and managing some of the dynamics that are associated with your success, some of those conversations get misinterpreted by people as complaining. And their stance is, how dare you? I wish I was in your shoes. I wish I was managing what you were managing. I wish I had those sorts of problems. Not realizing that you're not complaining, but you're processing. But because an individual hasn't experienced the unique adversity that you're experiencing, they are unable to relate to it. And even though you got people around you, you feel alone. That's stress. And don't you allow anybody to minimize the nature of your stress. So there's stress that comes from struggle. There's stress that comes from success. Question is, what are scriptural strategies to actually deal with it? I'm going to give you 3. Here's number 1. Number 1, we see this in Jesus, prayer. Prayer. Prayer, watch this. Prayer doesn't always immediately change it. What prayer does is it changes me. Got me? It changes my perspective. It gives me power. It gives me passion. And so when I am dealing with stress that comes from realities that I might not be able to adjust. So for example, you have no control, you have very little control over scrutiny. So when I talked about the stress that comes from scrutiny, man, there's sometimes people's arrogance, people's assumptions, people's perspective contributes to that scrutiny. You can't control any of that. You can't control someone's arrogance. You can't control people's assumptions. You can control the way you present yourself. You cannot control the way that you're understood. And we live in a cultural context where people aren't really interested in understanding. A lot of people aren't, at least. They're interested in articulating their assumptions before they even make understanding, before they even attempt to get understanding. So because there are some realities that are contributing to my stress that I cannot control, what do I need to do? I can't manage them. I can't manage it. So I have to manage me. And so prayer becomes not an optional accessory. It becomes a necessity. And I think in situations like this, people want to hear something new and innovative and refreshing, what they would consider to be refreshing. But this is the cheat code. It's a timeless truth that works in every time. It's a timeless truth released to you in a timely manner. Prayer. Okay, second, I see this because this is what Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane. Prayer, right? I'm in the book. Yes, he did. All right. Second thing is this. People. Even though Peter, James, and John didn't go into the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus, they went close to the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus. They went up on the Mount of Olives. They went to the Mount of Olives with Jesus, so they were close enough. And here's what happens. Even though neither one of them were going to be able to go to the cross with Jesus, at least people who aren't going to go to the cross with you, you can take them to the garden with you. The right people. And it means, watch this, people who empathize even though they can't understand. Does that make sense? They can't understand. They don't know the pressure you're carrying. They don't know what it feels like to have the weight of the world on your shoulders. They don't know what it feels like that you're getting ready to have to go to the cross. They don't know what any of that feels like. But they can empathize, even though they can't understand. They give you the space to be human. And Jesus' humanity was uniquely revealed in the Garden of Gethsemane. Could you not pray with me 1 hour? That frustration was revealed. Praying until sweat came from him like great drops of blood. Humanity is revealed. But he took the same 3 people with him to the Mount of Transfiguration that he took with him to the Garden of Gethsemane, because those were people who could handle seeing his divinity. And they were also people that could handle seeing his humanity. They could see him at the highest of highs. They could see him at the lowest of lows and not see him differently. And if you and I are going to manage stress, we need people in our life who can do the same thing. So there's prayer, there's people, and here's the third scriptural stress strategy. There are practices. Now, when I say practices, I'm being very intentional in terms of the rhythms and the regiment that you have for your life that helps you. Watch this. Here's the way my coach said it to me. He said, Dharius, your rhythms aren't sacred, but your rhythms protect the things that are. And I can take you through scripture, and I believe Jesus' practices, his rhythms before the Garden of Gethsemane is what actually helped him handle the Garden of Gethsemane. His time away, solitude, his time sleep, his time taking naps, that's sleep, right? His times in prayer, that's refueling, that's refreshing. So you see these rhythms that he lived by, that I think the practices, they conditioned him for the stress. And here's the thing, your soul has to be in shape enough to handle the stress. The scrutiny isn't changing. The solitude might not change. The desire for sustainability might not change. So what does that mean? It means I have to. It means that I have to have practices in my life that condition my soul to carry the kind of weight that I'm carrying. And many people are operating with a rhythm and a routine that is reflective of rhythms and routines of people who aren't carrying the kind of weight you're carrying. You can't do what they do because they aren't carrying what you're carrying. But if you will engage in the practice of prayer, if you will make sure you're surrounded in times of stress, at least by people, by the right people who may not can understand, but they can empathize. And if you will make a commitment to engage in practices, rhythms that strengthen your soul, you might have a little stress, but the stress won't have you. That's my prayer for your life. And if you're looking for help in terms of managing this area of your life with spiritual and emotional and even relational intelligence, I want to invite you to consider being a part of my coaching community called Daniels Den. You can get on the waiting list for that. Link is in the description. Take care.